First reading is from the book of Acts, chapter 10, verses 1 to 6 and 7 to 20, Saul's conversion. Meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting," he replied. "Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." When the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius called 2 of his servants and a devout soldier who was one of his attendants. He told them everything that had happened and sent them to Joppa. Peter's vision. About noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat. And while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its 4 corners. It contained all kinds of 4-footed animals, as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." "Surely not, Lord," Peter replied. "I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This happened 3 times, and immediately the sheet was taken back to heaven. While Peter was wondering about the meaning of the vision, the men sent by Cornelius found out where Simon's house was and stopped at the gate. They called out, asking if Simon, who was known as Peter, was staying there. While Peter was still thinking about the vision, the Spirit said to him, "Simon, 3 men are looking for you, so get up and go downstairs. Do not hesitate to go with them, for I have sent them." And from the book of John, chapter 20, verses 24 to 31, Jesus appears to Thomas. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." The purpose of John's Gospel. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Amen.
Goose Gossage, Raleigh Fingers, who were they? They were relief pitchers, right? Raleigh Fingers, I mean, what a name for a pitcher, eh? Fingers, Raleigh Fingers, Goose Gossage. They were very famous relievers. And when they wanted the hard ball to be pitched as hard as they could, they'd call those guys out, and they would pretty well do away with the people at bat. Well, I'm going to pitch some questions to you today. And if you only remember two of them, or only maybe strike at two of them, that's fine. I'm going to pitch these questions at you, and you just think about them in your head. And if you stop at the first one, you can ignore the other ones, or if you want to get to the third one, that's fine. Okay? So here's the first question. How do you know you're a Christian? Think about that. How do you know you're a Christian? Think about it. If someone asked you, how do you know you're a Christian? What would you say? Second question. What do you believe that you associate with being a follower of Jesus? What do you believe that you associate being a follower of Jesus? Think about it. Third question. What daily activities do you observe that you know a non-Christian would not? What daily activities do you observe that you know a non-Christian would not? Could have been 3 strikes right there. Eh? A few more. Can someone be a Christian if they don't attend church? Can someone be a Christian if they don't read the Bible? Can someone be a Christian if they don't pray and talk to God? And the fourth one, can someone be a Christian if they don't have Jesus as their Savior and Lord? They just believe there is a God. Very important questions, and we might have answers for them, we might not have answers, but there were 3 strikes and 4 balls. There were 7 questions on that. So, something to think about. These questions about what it means to be a Christian. How did those first followers of Jesus know they were Christians? How did they know? And how did the people around them know that they were Christians, that they were followers of Jesus? How did they know? Because they did. The people who weren't followed, they knew that these people were different. Jesus had such an effect on the people who he touched that they were changed forever. They were different. And they knew it because they were changed from the inside, and those around them knew it because they acted differently. They responded to them and to the world differently. In other words, when they met Jesus, there was what's called a conversion that took place, a change. And I found a really interesting definition of conversion. The conversion experience is this, is a turning to God more than a change of mind or undergoing some experience. It is a concrete change to a new way of life, a turning in one's tracks and going in a new direction. Repenting and believing, which leads to not only an observable new way of life, but to a spiritual transformation. being changed into the likeness of Jesus Christ. In other words, you're going in your life, going in one direction, making your own decisions. God touches you, you experience Jesus, and then you turn around and you follow him. That in essence is what conversion is. When I was in university, I studied psychology. And one of the things that we did to apply the things that we learned was to do case studies. And so we'd read case studies about people who had this psychological impairment and who had this psychological defect and all those things back then. And you'd use these case studies and you'd be able to apply the knowledge that you learned to these case studies. And then if you ever got out and you were working with people, you could maybe remember, oh, in this case, this is what happened and I can do this. Well, today, very quickly, we're going to do a case study of Paul's conversion, because even though his conversion was dramatic, we can gain things about ourselves and our relationship with God through these. So, first of all, Jesus appears to Paul on the road to Damascus. Now, Paul is an enemy of God at this point. He is knocking on doors, arresting people, throwing them in jail. He was smiling and approving when Stephen was stoned to death. He is out to do away with anything Christian, with any followers of Jesus, which is called the way back then. And so he had a hatred for anything that had to do with Jesus or his followers. And so he was trying to contain them in Jerusalem. But some of them had escaped, and some of them went to Damascus. And there were 3 synagogues there, and they were probably hideout in the synagogues. So he went to the high priest, and I want a letter of extradition. I want a letter, so if I find anybody who follows Jesus, I want to be able to arrest him and bring him back to Jerusalem and put him in jail, or maybe worse. So this was why he was on his way to Damascus, because he heard that some of the followers of Jesus were there. So on the way to Damascus, which is 150 miles, about a 1-week journey, as they almost get there, Paul was all fuming with hatred, ready to go and get these Christians, and God intervenes. It says that there was a flash of light that was brighter than the sun. Knocked him to the ground. And then he went blind, and he couldn't see. And he heard a voice, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" He says, "My Lord, what do you mean? Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And so Paul finds himself not being the confident, ready to go and get those disciples and bring them back, into this man who is now blind. He is led by the hand into Damascus. Everybody knew he was coming, even Ananias, who God had talked to about Ananias going to lay hands on him to heal him of his blindness. Everybody knew Paul was coming. And instead of coming in as this arrogant, I'm going to get the Christians, he's led by the hand, blind. He needed help. He couldn't do it himself. And so Paul, whose career was interrupted, was now touched by the hand of God to go and to be a person who he never thought he would be. Now, when Jesus appeared to Paul, it was a revelation to him, because he knew that when he was persecuting his followers, it was revealed to him he was also persecuting Jesus. Now, Paul was obsessed with everything anti-Jesus. And sometimes when we become obsessed with something negative, that's God trying to draw you to see that it's something positive or something good. He wanted to get rid of Jesus and everything Jesus. God used that obsession to turn it towards serving him with the same ferocity as he used in trying to oppose the Christian faith. And so, as we know, Paul is led and he goes to the house on Straight Street. Straight Street is still a street in Damascus. To Straight Street, and Ananias comes in fear and trepidation, speaks to him and lays hands on him, and basically Ananias placed his hands on him and said, "Brother Saul, Jesus who appeared to you on the road as you were coming here has sent me so that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit." And so Saul is freed. He's freed. There are three pieces of evidence about Saul's conversion. The first piece of evidence, which shows that his conversion was due to the grace of God. The first piece of evidence that's called Saul's conversion was due to the grace of God was that Paul was his enemy. And he would not, on his own, all of a sudden turn to be a friend of God. And so this experience of Jesus changed him from being an enemy of God to a friend of God. The second evidence that it was due to the grace of God was that he was literally knocked off his feet and blinded. He was not the person he was when he was on the horse. He was different. And so only an act of God could have done that. He couldn't have planned it. Lightning couldn't have struck him and he fell off and went blind. God's grace did that. And the third one is that the grace of God touched him because in his letters he gives reference. He gives reference to the event. Reference to the event when God came upon him and touched his life. And so we have Saul, an enemy of God, who's touched by God through his grace and becomes the greatest missionary that the world has ever known. And his eyes were opened. And I think that we who are Christians in our lives, we have a degree of spiritual blindness, and reading the Bible and worshiping and serving him opens our eyes more and more all the time. And every time that we look at God's word and we worship and pray, God wants to open our eyes even more to sort of lift the scales off our eyes so that we see more clearly the spiritual things that God has for us. And so Saul, on that road, was touched and he met God. It's the difference between, you see, Saul knew all the scriptures. He knew everything there was to know. He probably knew everything there was to know about the Messiah. But he didn't know the Messiah. And when he was converted to Christianity, he went from knowledge about God to knowing Jesus. And that's what it's all about. When we're converted to Christianity, no matter how it happens, I don't think any of us have been blinded, literally blinded, or any of us fell off our chair, or any of us couldn't see for a while. But God has touched all of us. And we know without certainty that that conversion is real when we have that relationship, when we talk to God every day, when we hear from him through his scripture, when we come and worship. And that's the model that we know. That's how we know the evidence that we are part of God's family. And so, when Jesus confronted Saul, it was because of his grace and his love. When Jesus touches us, it's because of his grace and his love towards us. And if we look in our lives, sometimes Jesus touches us to make us take a look at where we are. Maybe we are blinded to something that he wants to see us. Maybe we have an attitude or a thought or a conviction that he wants to change. Maybe he wants to soften our hearts more and help us reach out. God's always wanting to do things in our lives. And when we look for that and see through the eyes that he gives to us, then we become like Paul. He opens our eyes to all the wonders of himself and of his glory. And so, even although Paul became this great apostle, each one of us are called to be a part of the family of God and to show forth God's glory and love and peace and grace to each other. It's the highest calling that God gives to us. Amen. As God gives his grace and mercy to us, let us give back unto him our tithes and our offerings.